I'm Caitlin and welcome back to the Lit Review. Today we're gonna do a little recommendation video if you're participating in the Trick or Treatathon this October. Now, I have a whole video explaining the ins and outs and the cool details of the Trick or Treatathon, but what you need to know for this video is that I'm a co-captain for one of the 5 teams. I am the co-captain for Team Magic, and it is a bingo-based readathon. So while we're competing in a friendly sort of way against each other, that said, we're all working off of the same basic number of prompts. If you join Team Magic or any of the other teams, there will be 2 options for you for a bingo board. You can either make your own, and you can choose which of those 40-something prompts you would like on your board, or you can use the pre-made board that is different for each team. So what I'll be doing here today is going through the Team Magic bingo board to offer some recommendations or insights. It'll be a mix of things that I myself have already read and can highly recommend to you, or it'll be things that are on my TBR that I'm hoping to read for the readathon and maybe we can read together. I will leave the link to the Discord down below for the Trick or Treatathon. It's going to be a ton of fun. Please come join us. It's going to take place all through October. And even if this readathon doesn't feel like your thing, there's still going to be some great recommendations for spooky season in this video. So stick with me and we'll get through it. Like I said before, I'm going to be taking us through the Team Magic bingo board. So I will tell you what the number of the prompt is, what the prompt is, and then I will offer usually 1 to 2 recommendations for what that thing could be. Some of these are going to be highly dependent on your individual TBRs though, so I'll call that out when that's important. Okay, I have my little list. I wrote everything down on a piece of paper, but the first thing you'll see on the Team Magic pre-made board is prompt number 2, movie night. A book that has a movie or TV adaptation. You have a lot of options here and you should definitely tailor it to your personal taste in movie and TV shows, but what I would recommend to you is actually a adaptation where I think the movie is better than the book. That's right, I said it, and it's super frickin' rare, which is why I think you should still read the book and find out for yourself whether or not I'm right. And that is Stardust by Neil Gaiman. So the book is decent. It's a fun fantasy-style romp that is still going to give you all the right vibes for spooky season. Even if it's not terribly spooky, there are witches involved, which feels relevant for Team Magic, even if they are the bad guys in the book. But the movie it is hilarious, and I think it is one of the rare exceptions where the movie is better than the book. Prompt number 36, witch, in all caps, with an exclamation mark. And that is read a book with or about the Salem or Pendle witches. So you could go nonfiction with this, you could go fiction with this. I have 2 options for you, and I'll put their covers up on the screen. The first is We Ride on Sticks by Quan Barry, and that is a more contemporary book about a, what's it called, field hockey team? There it is, those are the words. Field hockey team set in Salem who may start to feel connected to that history of female witches. That one I have tried to read in the past, but just failed at reading, so that might actually be on my TBR this year. And then one that I have read and I liked but didn't love, but still think it totally fits this prompt and could be a fun one for my historical readers out there, and that is The Physic Book of Deliverance, Dane by Catherine Howe. I believe it's the first in a duology or maybe even a series, but I only read the first one. Really enjoyed it from the historical perspective. If you like A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness, then you should try out The Physic Book of Deliverance, Dane, because it gives some similar vibes, but personally I think Deborah Harkness's books are a little better. So prompt number 15 is Coven, read a book with sisters or a found family trope. Now, I can't say for 100% certain that this will have that, but I'm getting the found family vibes pretty hardcore from the back of the book, and it's one I'm super excited to read, so I think this one is actually going to go on my TBR. And that's The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. This came in my August Read Romance Repeat box, and I'm very excited to read it. It obviously has witches, which feels always appropriate for Team Magic. This is probably what I will be reading for that prompt, but I think it's gonna have that found family trope. Prompt number 34, you're a monster. And that one is read a book with a villain's point of view. This is one I had to do some like digging because I couldn't think of something off the top of my head, even though I'm sure I've read books with villainous point of views before. One of the ones that I saw come up frequently online was actually Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. First of all, gorge, love the cover, has spooky vibes for sure, but the internet assures me that you do follow morally gray characters and potentially a villain in here, so I know you're not always supposed to believe what's on the internet, but in this case I'm just going to roll with it and hope that it works out. This is going to be on my TBR for Team Magic this year. Then we have prompt number 38, pumpkin. Read a book with a pumpkin on the cover or in the title. So there are a couple of different options for this. One that I've read and one that I found online that just seems cute. So for the one I've read, I feel like this is a perennial favorite. It's a graphic novel, very easy to consume. Good Old Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell and Faith Erin Hicks. I know that Rainbow Rowell is not everybody's fave in the community, and I get why, I do. This is maybe the one exception I personally like to make because this is a very charming little graphic novel about a pumpkin patch. And it's full of cute things. The art's fantastic. Faith Erin Hicks is amazing. And there's a lot of cute food and buy rep and it's adorable. So I like this one as an easy win for pumpkin in the cover as well as on the cover. That said though, because I would like to read something new for myself, something that's on my broader radar here, is a romance novel that I found on Kindle Unlimited, surprise, surprise, and that is In Her Pumpkin Patch by Alina Jacobs. The cover looks silly cute with its illustrated cover trend, but it's basically a grump sunshine trope themed around Halloween, where there's a grumpy billionaire who just doesn't dig the whole Halloween vibe, and wouldn't you know it, his chauffeur for a recent business trip literally shows up in a hearse because she's obsessed with Halloween. And I'm ready. I'm ready to make that my personality this fall, honestly. So now we move down to the second row in the Team Magic bingo board. So number 40 is kidnapped. So you have a couple of different ways you can utilize this prompt. So one is you can read a book set outside of your country that you're currently living in, or just a book that features kidnapping. I'm going to recommend to you one of my favorite series of all time, and the first book, the first full-length book in this series, is set predominantly in the UK and Scotland specifically, although there is some stuff I think in London as well, or maybe France. And then there's also a kidnapping, crucially, so it fits for both things. And that's Kresley Cole's Immortals After Dark series, and it is a hunger like no other, where a werewolf shifter finds his mate, who is a half vampire, half Valkyrie. So she's quite timid and is a little overwhelmed initially by this idea that this big, gruff, angry dude is her mate, and he's super disgruntled about it because he wholeheartedly believes that she's his mate, but he's angry because she's half vampire, and in this world, vampires and werewolves are deep enemies. So he kidnaps her to take her back home because it turns out he's also a king. So he's going to take her back. Going to take her back to a castle. Please just read it. It's going to be great. Next, for prompt number 16, we have Lost in the Dark. Read a book with the isolation trope. So for that, I have not read this, but I know it features the isolation trope and could be actually a good fit for several other prompts within the readathon. But that's The Martian by Andy Weir. So isolation trope because it's an astronaut who's literally stranded on Mars. Isolation at its finest. Then for prompt number 1, we have October, which is a similar prompt to one we had last year, and that's just read a book that was published in October, which I think is kind of fun because I don't always pay a lot of attention to publication dates unless I'm like hungering for a specific book. So this was a fun one to go back and find. I have 2 recommendations for you, but they are recommendations that may show up on my own TBR because I haven't read them yet. And that is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. Yes, this book that I keep saying I'd like to read and would like to read but never do is also showing up on like probably the 5th TBR recommendation video. One day I'll do it. Maybe this will be the time. I know the sequel of this is coming out soon, but this was originally published in October, so option number 1. And then another kind of spooky thematic book is The Library of the Unwritten by A.J. Hackwith. And this, I think, in part is literally set in hell. So that seems appropriate for a spooky themed readathon. Then for prompt 31, we have Souls of the Damned, a book with reincarnation or a soul, or the word soul, in the title. So I have a recommendation for you that I literally just picked this book up in a recent book haul, and part of why I picked it up may not have been this readathon. But that is A Witch in Time by Constance Sayers. But the main character, Helen, has been just dying tragically and living kind of like a tragic life over and over and over again, reincarnated, only to have this great love that ultimately falls apart or fails. So she's trying to like break the cycle once she realizes what's going on. So reincarnation, witches, potentially delightful. I'm optimistic. Then we have prompt number 29, which is Double Trouble. So read a book with twins. And the book that I think I'm most likely to read for this is Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco. This has been on my TBR for a while. It's a beautiful fairy loot edition. All I know about this is that it's a YA where the main character is a twin, and her jumping off point for the journey that she goes on, including asking for help from a literal prince of hell, is that her twin is murdered. So she is a twin. There are twins in this book. So I think this is an easy win and very atmospheric looking based on the cover. Then we have prompt number 19, Looks Like Murder. And that's read a book that features a murder. I have a couple of options here for you that come from my own TBR that I hope to read one of these during this readathon. So the first option is No Gods, No Monsters by Cadwell Turnbull. So this starts off in a kind of contemporary space but gets spookier or more paranormal as our main character finds out the tragic news that her brother has been shot by cops in Boston. As more gets revealed about the event surrounding her brother's shooting, it becomes apparent that monsters are real. So a bunch of kind of potentially seemingly disparate or disconnected stories start to interweave related to our main character's initial jumping off point and the idea that monsters are real. If you're looking for something slightly more lighthearted but also still murdery, I think I would check out The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. Octogenarian sleuths trying to solve a murder. So this is the first in a series. It sounds like lighthearted and cute, but still featuring of the murder. So this is another option for that prompt. Then we have prompt number 11, and that is grim. So read a grim or dark twisted fairy tale. So I don't know where my copy of this is, but I do know it's got to be around here somewhere, and that is The Girl in Red by Christina Henry. So this is a riff on Little Red Riding Hood, but is featured in like a post-apocalyptic world. It's just, I hear really good things from those who like Christina Henry's writing. I am also just a big chicken, so I'm a little afraid of like the thriller horror components, but I'm hoping it will be good. I think this is going to be my selection for my TBR this year. And then of course you're going to get a free space. So one of the things that you could do for this prompt is to read a different prompt that's not on your pre-made board, and then kind of just like count that as your free space. But you can also obviously just, it's free space. You do with it what you will. But I do want to take this opportunity to remind my Team Magic users that if you are part of Team Magic, we have a trick and a treat. So the trick is that you have to read a book that is over 500 pages. And once you have completed your trick and read that book of over 500 pages, then you can utilize your treat, which is to make a book of your choosing fit into whatever prompt you want. So keep that in mind as you are building out your TBRs if you are part of Team Magic. But onward with the bingo board. So prompt number 14 is monsters, and this has a whole list of different types of monsters that you could read a book from. So a book that features zombies, a mummy, vampire, werewolf, Frankenstein, just any of the classic monsters that you can think of. And I think specifically those are called out because some things like ghosts also feature their own prompt. So try to stick within the monsters mentioned, but also we have plenty of options for you. I will only be listing one here because this is definitely going on my TBR. It's one I have tried to read before but just didn't get around to, and that's A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. Now, I believe this book is also one of the other captain's favorites on their list of favorite books, so that could potentially also be an answer to one of those prompts. But this is a riff on like the Dracula story and features vampires for our monster, but this is like a sapphic reimagining of Dracula's brides. Then we have prompt 33, spells. So a book of poetry, mixed media, short stories, comics, manga, you know, any of those things could work. Basically the short kind of books. There's a lot of options again for this. I think what I will be choosing is one that I have held on to for over a year in the hopes that I could like make it work for a spooky season TBR, and this year I think is my year. That is Fangs by Sarah Anderson. So you can see quite wee, quite little, quite satisfying to click clack my nails on. But it is a graphic novel where I believe a vampire falls for a werewolf, and I just expect it to go pretty quickly, be super cute for the season, and hopefully a good read. Then we have number 25. It's a classic. Read a classic horror book. So I have two options for you. Clearly, I have been feeling the vampire vibes based on some of my recent recommendations for this video. So check out Dracula by Bram Stoker if you haven't already. But if you're looking for a classic that's slightly off the beaten path, then I would recommend the classic Gothic novella The Castle of Otranto by Horace Walpole. It's considered by some historians to be like the first example of like a Gothic romance or Gothic literature. So it's not a romance in the traditional romance reader sort of way, but romance with like a capital R. So like the era of history of Gothic romances, and but there is a romantic component to the story. It's been a long time since I've read it, but it went very quickly and has a lot of tropes that we now associate with Gothic storytelling. So check it out if you'd like to see one of the potential OGs of the Gothic genre. Then we have prompt number 9, Slumber Party. A friend picks a book for you. So there's a lot of different ways you could do this. Obviously, you can and should utilize the friends in your own life so that you can buddy read together, but it's also, you can still use friends from the readathon, and you can count me as one of your friends. So literally anything I've mentioned, please consider that free reign for me to have picked something for you. However, if you would like me to specifically call out something I wish more people would read, I do have some options for you. Both available on Kindle Unlimited. So it is a fantasy romance featuring wolf shifters and a Why Choose romance, and that is With Fangs and Claws by Sam Hall. And then the other one that, wow, I really enjoyed over the summer was Luxuria by Colette Rhodes. So this is a romance between a human woman and I think like a fear demon. It was spicy as all get out, funny, a little raunchy, and truly one of the best uses of the miscommunication trope, because it was freaking hilarious how the miscommunication came about. I would love to read more Colette Rhodes, and I hope that you will give Luxuria a chance. It is the first in a series. There is more coming. I believe the next one is coming out next year. So these are both series that hopefully will continue to come out next year, but really recommend the book 1 of each of those series. So number 3 is captains. So read a book with a captain's favorite book. So I have a list. My co-captain Heather from Bell's Library has a list. I will talk about what I'm going to read for this, and I'm going to try to read something off of Heather's list of favorite books. And Heather mentions Night Swim by Megan Golden as one of her favorite books, which is full of like a lot of thriller and mysteries. So Night Swim also is on my radar because it follows a podcast, and I really like, again, mixed media formats. So it just seems like a really good fit for me personally in my reading habits, but it also happens to be one of Heather's favorites. So this is what I will be reading for the prompt of Captain. Then we have number 28, Boogeyman or Boogeyman. I'm not really sure. I don't think I've ever said that word out loud. Read a book with the Boogeyman or featuring Baba Yaga. I had to dig deep for this one. I have not read anything that I can think of off the top of my head that fits either of those, but I found something online that looks super cute and I would absolutely be willing to try, called Ask Baba Yaga. Oh, I'm gonna butcher this person's name, but I'm gonna do my best. Tasia Kitaskaya. It's in the kind of format of, what's the phrase I'm looking for? It's in the format of like people almost writing Dear Abby letters, except it's like Dear Baba Yaga, and Baba Yaga responds to them with like the wisdom of the ages. So it's an entirely fictional book, but it kind of has the feeling of a little bit of like self-help and guided meditation, because it's like Baba Yaga giving life advice to all of these fictional people. So it just seems like really cute and a fun read for that prompt in general. I might try it out this season. Then you have prompt number 24, which is Find Your Familiar, a book with familiars or animal sidekicks. It's his Dark Materials, my bad. But this is the first book. Any of the other three would also work because the familiar thing comes up a lot in this book series, but this could totally work. Number 4 is the prompt name is Treat, but it is not necessarily the treat I mentioned earlier with Trick or Treat, so that this is just the prompt treat. Reread a favorite book and enjoy a favorite fall treat. So I have been very slowly rereading different books from the Anita Blake Vampire Hunter series lately, because I want to get back into the series. It's still ongoing, but it has like 20-something books. So I think what I will likely be doing during this time is picking up wherever I next am on the series by the time the readathon rolls around. So I will be reading something from the Anita Blake Vampire Hunter series, but obviously that's very specific to where you are and what your favorites are to reread. So have fun with that on your TBR and try to find something seasonal if you can. Then we have prompt number 35, which is Festival Food, a book with food on the cover. And so I have a couple of options here, neither of which I've read, but are both on like my very long TBR list. One of them is spooky and one of them is not. Sometimes I like to sprinkle in some completely unrelated themes because sometimes you just need a palate cleanser when you're doing these readathons. So for me, my potential palate cleanser option would be Chef's Kiss by TJ Alexander. This is a bakery themed romance, so you can't really see it super clearly from this distance, but the back has got a bunch of like pastry and cakes and stuff on the back cover. I love a good baking themed romance. I'm always charmed by them. I don't know, this just feels like really cute, even though it's not obviously seasonal. I'd still really like to read it. The more obvious option here would be the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. I still have not read this. I would like to read this. Obviously there are oranges on the cover, so that'll do for food. And it just, again, perfect colors for fall, perfect setting or topic for fall. I just need to get off my butt and read it. Then we have prompt number 20, Flirt with Danger. Read a romance. Hi, you've come to the right place. I will absolutely recommend romances here, but I'll limit myself to 2 because I could go very far down this road if I let myself. So one I have not read and would like to, and that is The Regrets by Amy Bonifants. It is a ghost romance, which could also help for, I think, one of the other prompts that's not on this bingo board, but there is a ghost prompt somewhere else in the readathon, so this could still work for you. Another romance recommendation that I have read and absolutely loved. You could read any of the books in this series, but I always like to start from the beginning with recommendations for you all when I can. So that is Feral Sins by Suzanne Wright. Holy green guacamole, is this good? Like, I read this for the first time this year, and it's probably one of my favorite where romances ever. So high praise from me on that one. We're getting to the end. We only have a couple of prompts left. So number 10 is Mystery Candy. Message a team captain or the host, Megan, for a prompt or a recommendation. So here's what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to offer you 2 different prompts and then offer some recommendations as well to both of those prompts so that you can use this video as a potential resource to complete that prompt. And I'm going to do options because I am a heavy romance reader, but that does not mean that everybody participating in this readathon is. So I'm going to give you an option that's more romance themed and then one that you can absolutely complete complete without utilizing romance, even though the recommendations I'm going to offer you are romance themed. So the first of my two potential prompts for you is to read a romance starring a witch. So several of the books that I've already mentioned would work, but here are a couple of contemporary romances where the main character is a witch or Wicca user. So they are not books that have like a strong storyline involving witchcraft, but I think I wanted to offer you some options that are like spooky season adjacent or still involve witches. So take a hint, Dani Brown by Talia Hibbert. Dani Brown says pretty early on that she's a witch. So Dani Brown is a witch in this book. You're not going to see her do much with it. She just like identifies that way and then kind of drops it and moves on. But the romance between Dani and her fake dating partner Zaf is so cute. Of course, fake dating turns to real dating. It's the way of the world in the romance novel, but dang is it cute. Love this book, love this series. Give it a go. And then another book that's in that same general vibe of like the main character mentions Wicca but doesn't really practice, I believe, and that's Zenny by Rebecca Weatherspoon. This is the ultimate oddball marriage of convenience. Like the marriage of convenience feels so weirdly ham-fisted, but then it just organically works so well. This is also a really compelling romance with a powerful female friend group and really good discussions from both main characters about grief. Both of the main characters are also plus size, and they're both bisexual, and it's just a really freaking good book. So here's where I'm gonna get clever, because if the witch romance thing isn't your vibe, here's my alternative prompt for you, and that is read a book where the title or the author's name features the word Eve. Because Halloween is sometimes also known as All Hallows Eve. So that gives you a lot of creative freedom. So one other option that also features the Brown Sisters trilogy is Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. I just really love this series. Any chance I can get to recommend it I think is worth taking, but it is a good example of like the word Eve being in the title. There's also authors like Eve Dangerfield or Jamin Eve who are romance authors. There's plenty of other authors who have Eve in their name or utilize the word Eve in their titles. Do with that what you will, but those are my recommendations for you. And then finally, our last prompt for the pre-made Team Magic board is number 8, Squirrel Cachet. Read one of the oldest books on your TBR. So again, this is going to be hyper dependent on you all and what's been on your TBR, and there's a couple of different ways you could interpret this prompt. So literally like the oldest thing on your TBR by date of publish is an option, or it could be something that you physically have owned the longest but is still unread. I guess technically you could do a reread for here too. We don't have any like hardcore rules about that, but those are your options. So I have provided one from my TBR for each of those choices. And yeah, let me talk to you about them real quick. So I've mentioned this in a couple of different books and videos, but Sweet Tooth by Ian McEwan has been on my TBR for the better part of a decade, and I am still here, not having read it. It is on my priority shelf. I feel like this is the year. I need to do something with this book, or I need to let it go. You know, I need to let it live if it's not going to get read by me. But it is a historical, like low stakes thriller because it involves spies set in the 60s. So I think it could be cool. It's definitely old on my TBR. I don't know. In terms of physical age, I think this is maybe the second or third oldest on my owned books, but I think this is the one that I have not yet read. So this is a Spoon River Anthology by Edgar Lee Masters. It is a collection of poems told from the perspective of headstones and folks who have passed in this rural small town of Illinois. It's an entirely fictional account, but it was originally published in 1915. A college professor recommended it to me way back in the day, so it's also something that I've been aware of for a long time. So that was a lot, but those are all of my recommendations for you for the pre-made Team Magic bingo board. Of course, even if you're not Team Magic, if you're utilizing some of those prompts for your own team's board or the board that you've made yourself, hopefully these prompts were still super helpful for you. And even if you made it all the way to the end of this thing and you're not participating in the Trick or Treat-a-thon, first of all, you should do that. You should absolutely go participate if you made it all the way through this thing for no good reason, but hopefully also a good reason is that there are plenty of atmospheric spooky recommendations for you in this video. And I'm really excited to add a lot of these books to my TBR this upcoming October. So once again, you can find the Discord information for the Trick or Treat-a-thon in the description box down below. I hope to see you on Team Magic, but even if you're not on Team Magic, I am still very excited for this readathon and hope you participate. So thanks for hanging out with me, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!